Let us get first to Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by confirmation hearing season continues. The confirmation hearings for John Ratcliffe for CIA, Pam Bondi for Attorney General, and Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, among others, are going on right now as we speak. Secretary of State nominee Rubio laid out his priority for the State Department.
Every dollar we spend, every program we fund, every policy we pursue must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Or does it make America more prosperous?
Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi talked about election integrity.
You know, Senator, all I can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course, that Joe Biden is president of the United States. But what I can tell you is what I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign. And I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much, you know, no one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
CIA nominee John Ratcliffe laid out his priorities for the agency.
Above all, will be a strict adherence to the CIA's mission. We will collect intelligence, especially human intelligence, in every corner of the globe, no matter how dark or difficult. We will produce insightful, objective, all-source analysis, never allowing political or personal biases to cloud our judgment or infect our products.
Moving on, nearly every House Democrat voted to block the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act on Tuesday. Despite the overwhelming opposition from Democrats, the bill passed the House with Republican support. The landmark legislation amends Title IX so that protections are recognized based on sex rather than the so-called gender identity an individual claims to adopt. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spoke out against the bill.
Women are bleeding out in parking lots across the country to open up gender and, yes, genital examinations into little girls in this country. Trans girls are girls. I've played co-ed sports all the time. Assaulters love this bill, but also CEOs love this bill. Los Angeles is on fire right now.
In Texas, that state's House of Representatives elected Republican Dustin Burrows as its new speaker. Burrows won his speaker race with more support from Democrats than Republicans. That sounds familiar. The Food and Drug Administration said it's banning the use of red dye number 3, a synthetic dye that gives food and drinks their bright red cherry color, but it's been linked to cancer in animals. The dye is still used in thousands of foods, including candy, cereals, cherries, and fruit cocktails, and strawberry-flavored milkshakes. And finally, a retrospective on Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing for Secretary of Defense. Brother, we've all been there.
Yes,
Are you willing to support our veterans organizations that will help our veterans get every damn thing that they deserve because they signed on the dotted line to keep us safe, just like.
For those of you listening, well, that's why you got to watch every now and then. And that's what happened while we were away.
Indeed, that is visual confirmation that the only thing worse than the patriarchy, I promise you, will be the matriarchy. Indeed. All right, let's get to Aaron's montage. And can I ask you two guys a question? And, you know, there's a great advantage to having an app like X at our disposal, particularly in this line of work, where one of the requirements of this line of work is to be very well informed. And it would be much harder without a catch-all app like X to do that, right? Okay.
For sure.
But, you know, even if you try to go out of your way to follow different sides of the argument in your feed so that you're not getting necessarily one narrative or the other, because it's not the narrative that I'm concerned about being as informed for you as I want to be. It's not the narrative being demonstrated. It's the narrative that maybe says, here's what we won't let you see. That I'm way more concerned about that. All right, you know what I'm saying? Like I think I'm smart enough. You're all smart enough. We can filter through somebody's BS commentary to what we are seeing. The real thing we can't do is make ourselves see things either we're not privy to or don't have the time for. Right? Okay. Right. So we all agreed that this was the stakes in this last election were existential in nature, for sure. We all agreed on that to some extent. Yeah. Okay. We all agree to some extent that Trump has shown more seriousness and preparedness for governing in this go around than he did at this time in 2017 and late 2016. We all agree to that too, right?
Yes.
Okay. And we all saw that the Democrats wanted to win this election so bad they conducted an open coup against their own sitting president and then denied their own voters. While claiming to be the pro-choice party, they denied them a choice in who was going to actually succeed Joe Biden and rigged the entire thing in order to give themselves the best chance to win, clearly demonstrating they thought the stakes of this election were somewhat important and existential as well. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. It's only been 2 days. It's only been 2 days. It's early. All right. But is there like serious questioning of Trump's cabinet officials anywhere?
No.
I mean, like anywhere.
They're doing a huge favor to these cabinet picks.
I agree. No, I think they're doing a disfavor to I think there are some things we would like to know, probably, right?
Sure.
Okay. But did you get drunk and say, kill all the Muslims? Okay. Well, that was a question asked of Pete Hegseth yesterday.
Yeah.
What's this racist symbol you have tattooed? It's the symbol over at the National Cathedral where we had Jimmy Carter's funeral a couple days ago. We were all at. Okay. Is this just, I'm a prisoner of the funnel of using X and these are the kinds of things that both sides, for their engagement farming and clickbaiting, and it's easy to grasp? Or is there another level and layer of questioning going on here by and large that we're just not seeing because it's just more C-SPAN-y and boring to the average political consumer who prefers porn to Gone with the Wind? I don't know. I'm asking. I'm asking this question.
This is exactly
because I want to make sure I'm not just consuming low-lying fruit when there's some other stuff available that maybe I'm just not aware of, and I'll go get it because I am wholly unimpressed. I have to tell you by the questions being asked.
You didn't expect to be impressed, did you?
I expected even on the demagoguery side. I expected a better demagoguery than this. I mean, this stuff is just clown college. This is clown college dropout retards. I mean, it's embarrassing, frankly. I think they should take them off television. We're showing our ass to the rest of the world, okay? It's embarrassing to even look at it.
Aaron, what did you just say? This was just an important reminder of how utterly unimpressive these people are?
Yes.
Steve, this is Congress. This is it. On both sides. When's the last time you were just really impressed? That's it.
It's not often.
No, this is who they are.
I mean, I would think it would be vital to know some things given the stakes in the country but no one can rise above their own worldview, right? If you have the core worldview of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the Democratic Party does. Now, did I say they have all the beliefs of Ocasio-Cortez? Did I say that? No. Did I say they had all the postures and positions of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Did I say that? No. But the core worldview that she articulated there, the fundamental worldview that would cause her to draw the conclusions that she did in that just rambling, literally psychotic collection of clips there that you assembled in the montage, Aaron, is that representative of the Democratic Party?
It's insane.
100%.
Yeah.
100% it is.
Yeah. And here's the thing. They've been this way for a while, and quite frankly, they've won as often as they've lost with this. Mm-hmm. And when they win, they are merciless.
Correct.
When they lose in terms of an election, they know that our side isn't. So until our side, this time around, puts in place real consequences, actually does the thing on multiple fronts, they really don't have much of a reason yet to pivot. Now, there's a question of, are they even capable of pivoting? Because once you stare into the mouth of madness kind of thing. But honestly, now it's incumbent upon us to change the entire ballgame by being serious.
You want to know what's scarier than every Democrat earnestly being for the elimination of gender, sex, and opportunities for women in society that they claim to be the people on the avant-garde for when you and I were kids, Todd? Mm-hmm. You want to know what's even scarier than that? Let me tell you what I think, at least what I think is scarier than that. What I think is scarier than that is I am very confident that there's probably upwards of 40 of those Democrats, maybe even a few more, that do not agree with this. That do not. And in the past, what would have happened is they would have voted for this because they were not the party in power, and it wouldn't have been their fault that it passed. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. What's scarier than they would all earnestly be for it? What's scarier to me than that is that probably a third of them aren't. But they would much rather prefer placating a demonic construct than defending their own daughters. To me, from an evangelism standpoint, from an argumentation persuasiveness standpoint, I just take this as someone that's done a lot of debates and done a lot of appearances on cable news channels that don't agree with me and NPR. I've done a lot of this. I would much rather go up against someone of real convictions that are wholly different than mine than go up against, than try to persuade someone who has decided that approval and affirmation from the group they identify with is the most important of their principles.
Oh, for sure.
Much rather. If we're both starting from a position that there is some form of objective truth, there is some form of moral certainty, okay? Some things are absolutist, all right? Then eventually, my absolutes are the best ones. My moral certainties are the best ones. My objective truths are the best ones. Why? Because none of those are mine. They're all revealed by the only undefeated being in all of the universe. There's a reason why they wanted postmodernism and moral relativism and moral subjectivism before they debated us, because they knew that. They knew this. They knew that if it was about, they knew that if we had to come to some form of objective understanding of the universe, even if people will not bend the knee to Christ, they'll eventually bend the knee to some form of truth. You'll have Ayn Rand on the Phil Donahue show calling Christians nitwits, morons, and losers, and then go out and start her own philosophy called objectivism, which starts with, frankly, a lot of the same premises that the Christians do. Just she doesn't agree with the source of the premises, but they're many of the same ones. Many of the same ones. That's why we read her works and spread her works around while she's in hell, condemning us for it. Because she was a virulent God hater. That's a person that eventually I think is way more reachable than the one who has just put it on lukewarm. I think there's even I think our Lord might have even spoken to this dynamic at a particular point in time. Doesn't he look at a Roman centurion once and say, I've not seen faith like this in all of Israel from the uncircumcised man. But when someone has decided that they cannot be bothered, that level of idolatry to association and affirmation with a group, my experience is that's an even more frightening workaround I would rather walk in and debate a Satanist than I would somebody who's just Lindsey Graham levels of duplicitous, just a completely captured institution, and just a manifestation of a collection of interests that have written them checks. I think that's a much tougher argument. So I think it's scarier that probably a third of those Democrats really don't believe in what they voted for yesterday, but they were willing to do it anyway, Todd.
Yeah, and there's one area where they're not lukewarm. Their attachment to their group is all because of what that group runs counter to. And that's where they're not lukewarm. They hate the other. That's how you are able to sit on the other side of that table and treat Pete Hegseth and Kavanaugh before him like we're going to say anything we want to about you. It has to do with... It has nothing to do with the actual ideas.
Correct.
It has to do with you're the other, and therefore, since we have put you in this column of loathing, we can say anything about you. This started off in journalism. It happened when I was still there. We're not going to represent both sides. What if one side is evil? And by
what filter would they determine that is? Of course.
Whatever they want to.
A law unto themselves, yes.
I had a former journalism register colleague very recently get a hold of me in a DM. Haven't heard from him I've been with you for 10 years, Steve, so it's longer than that. We got along, and I knew he's a man of the left. He's probably 10 years younger than us, Steve. And he just said, I see what you say about the transgender issue on X, and I see it all the time, and I've been wanting to say something. I just want to say that it hurts me personally. I said, well, I've never made it personal. Do you want to talk about the issue or any ideas? He said, no, I just wanted to let you know. That's what you're talking about, Steve.
Yes.
Like they don't have to defend it. It's beneath them to defend it, and we're not going to talk about it. I'm just going to let you know that I find you inferior.
Correct. And
okay.
I think what's transpired in Europe since the fall of the Iron Curtain validates my premise, where the Eastern European countries, where the church was driven underground, where public religious expression was not permitted in the atheist, communist iron bloc, they have come out. Whether it's Viktor Orban's Hungary or Poland, they've come out by and large swinging in the last generation. And the Western countries that defeated the Soviet Union, that won the Cold War and defeated the Nazis, all right, they just were given over to their own lukewarmness and are largely just conquered by either the spirit of the age or Islam, but I repeat myself. I think this is what played out in the Texas legislature yesterday. I mean, you have a state like, how is it, guys? There's no political science answer for what the question I'm about to ask. This is why it is so important now that our side, the right, has to govern for really is demanded by the American people to sufficiently govern the country for the first time in a generation. Truly do it. This is why our emphasis on worldview, or I should say our re-emphasis, because it's the prime directive of the show, right? But similar to Star Trek, if you know the term prime directive, if you're on an exploration mission, then the prime directive is even more preeminent than if you're fighting Khan, or the Klingons in a war. Sure, the prime directive is still your prime directive, but you're not exploring strange new worlds at that point. You're trying to defend your own, right? Okay? So the worldview is always the prime directive of this show, but it's even more of a re-emphasis now that we have to govern the country. And there's a lot of things about ourselves that either were not exposed. We talked about this yesterday. A lot of Republicans in Florida thought they were just, Trump doesn't really mean it, just more Trump talking points like the first time he ran. And Ron's too big for his britches, and we want to teach him a lesson. Anyway, he's a lame duck. He's on his way out. So now we're going to pass on the whole special session, sir, on deportations, but thank you. And then Trump comes off the top rope and says, make sure everybody in the country is doing exactly what Ron DeSantis said. And then they followed up by going out and playing golf the next morning with one another. Okay.
Man, you are nailing exactly what we're seeing in Congress.
Same thing. So here's a state Again, you cannot through the political process explain how a state that by less than 40,000 votes almost elected a guy for governor that was literally doing cocaine off a hooker's ass, off a gay hooker's ass nonetheless. Andrew Gillum was literally snorting cocaine, doing lines of cocaine off a gay hooker's ass. And by less than 40,000 votes in a state of 21 million people, he almost became its governor instead of Ron DeSantis. How is it that that state is way to the right of Texas since 2018? How did that occur? You cannot explain that with just mere polling and political processing. What you have in a state like Texas is they're lazy. They're complacent. Well, don't mess with it's slogans. Don't mess with Texas. Yeah. School choice, I'm told, one of my best friends is a conservative lobbyist in Texas. He texted me yesterday, school choice is dead with this speaker.
So tell me...
He'll put a Democrat in charge of the Education Committee.
So tell me again why the Democrats in Congress would totally change things because, wow, we've learned our lesson. They're looking at Texas, and they're looking at Florida, and the reaction there that we just saw within the last 72 hours to what DeSantis is doing.
Yes.
They know we're going to pucker, Steve, because that's what we do.
It is what we do outside of a few exceptions, which is why I said yesterday, if a few people like DeSantis and Trump do not do it, nothing good will happen. Nothing. Nothing good will occur. There's no movement, and there hasn't been for a long time. There's no opposition resistance party here. Doesn't exist. There's another party, but it's not a true opposition resistance party, and it has to be dragged into that paradigm, kicking and screaming against itself, even in a state like Texas. So congrats. What is it? Something like a majority. I think Cruz got the highest percentage of Hispanic votes in his Senate reelection last year than any Republican has ever received in the history of the state of Texas. I think I read that in the exit polling down there. So you had all these crossover people, a bunch of Hispanics living on the border, seeing what's going on, all the lawlessness, crossover and become Republicans. Congrats. They just handed the legislative session over to the Democrats right after y'all did that. It's like you didn't even win. It's literally like you did not even win. And they've done this before, where Democrats run key committee hearings. This would never happen in any of their blue states. Would never happen. Never. There is no critical threshold of minority status in California where Democrats would be like, sure, let's put the Republicans in charge of the Education Committee while we're the majority. Hell to the no. Would never happen. They would be more likely to abolish the California Department of Education before they did something like that. And it wouldn't happen in Vermont, and it wouldn't happen in Massachusetts, and it wouldn't happen in New York, and it wouldn't happen in Illinois, and it wouldn't happen in Washington State, and it wouldn't happen in Oregon, and it wouldn't happen in Connecticut, and it wouldn't happen in Rhode Island. It wouldn't happen in Minnesota, any other places. Hell, in Minnesota, Democrats are refusing to show up for the state legislative session so that you can't get enough people sworn in for the power to change hands after the last election. That's how they roll. But even in Texas, man, in Texas, day one, just hand over the entire election results and just completely hand it over. And by the way, they've got a Republican governor down there, Greg Abbott. I mean, was he like vociferous about this and adamant, we can't let this happen. We cannot let the Democrats have control. We won a resounding victory. Quiet as kept. Quiet as kept, man. Quiet as kept.
This is why I absolutely bristle at any argument that is just default jingoistic and like, just to unleash America's potential. There it is.
So our opposition is serious about the immorality and godlessness they are for. But as people, they're not really serious. They're mental midgets. They're nitwits. There's no there. Been saying that for years. There's no there. None. How many times have you heard me say over the years, if they had something other than name calling, they would have done it. So they've got Pete Hegseth in the crosshairs, right? Would they spend most of their time doing yesterday? Can you confirm or deny you're a racist, misogynist, xenophobic, homophobic, bigot, and a Christian? That's all they've got. They cannot win an intellectual argument. They cannot.
Don't forget drunk all the time.
Yes, they cannot. They cannot win an intellectual argument. There is no intellectual basis for their arguments. This is why. There isn't any. They don't exist. So they're total clowns and unserious people, but they're serious about their clownness. And too many people on our side are serious people, but not serious whatsoever really about any kind of conviction or principle whatsoever. And I'll repeat what I said yesterday. This is the stuff that happens in a godless society, folks. Whether you want to look at it as a post-Christian one or a pre-Christian one, you want to take the pessimistic route, the optimistic route, you can make that call. But either one of them would be a godless society. And therefore, the best that we can do, and believe me, we can do a lot worse. A lot worse. Where your choices are Quinius in the states, in the Roman Senate, with his legions of pederast Greek Roman boys he's grooming for future sexual gratification, and Nero, who's marrying his gay slave there in the Senate. It can get worse, way worse. In a godless society, it can get way worse. The best we can do is some red Caesars will arise to push back on their total state. That is the best we can do. If you are pining away for some glorious movement, none exists. And cannot exist outside the framework of a revival. It just can't. Florida is in the position basically because of the singular drive of Ron DeSantis and those that he inspired therein. Similarly, anything good the Republican Party does with this mandate over the next few years will be done wholly and only by the singular drive of Donald Trump. And not by any other means. Not by any other means will this occur. None. I promise you. Because worldview is destiny. This is the best we can do. What moved our state so far to the right? Well, people like me helped to change the landscape on the ground in Iowa for years. But it wasn't until we got our own Red Caesar in the governor's mansion. And she was able to move the fulcrum to the right. That's how we got where we are. It won't happen any other way. The infrastructure isn't there. Ultimately, the will isn't there. The will is not there. I can't tell you on the radio what Sam Houston would do in response to winning a war and then having the people he won it for just take all the trappings of victory and just hand it off to the people he just defeated. I'd get everything on the Blaze band, but you know what the answer is. You know what he would do. You know what he would do. You know, Sam freaking Houston. Now we don't do anything. And so you can just have an entire election nullified in the Texas state legislature yesterday. Just completely nullified, like it never happened. I mean, Trump got the Electoral College vote, so thankful for that. But the rest of that election, really, it didn't happen. It's over. Rest of the election, that's all you got out of it, were the electoral votes for Trump and nothing else. And that, in a state like Texas, is a cell phone.